Let's say you want to ride your favorite TTC line, line 6. You get to the station and you realize something. You're going to have to wait a while for the next train. You might be thinking that the TTC and Metrolinx intended for the service to run at this headway, especially considering that light rail vehicles have over 3 times the capacity of the buses that ran on Finch West before the LRT opened. However, this doesn't tell the whole story. You may recall that Metrolinx promised to run the line every 10 minutes or better, with service during peak hours being around the same as the current 36 Finch West bus. To figure out why the service levels aren't as expected, let's look at how transit agencies actually implement service. To have the right level of service running on a route, a transit agency has to send out a certain number of vehicles to meet that demand. To determine how many vehicles to actually run on a line, a transit agency has to know how long that vehicle takes to do a round trip on the route. The number of vehicles needed on a route is simply the round trip time divided by the desired headway between vehicles, both of which are usually measured in minutes. The round trip time itself does include layover time at each end of the line, which you can adjust to as needed. For example, if a route requires 60 minutes to do a round trip, and you want to run it every 10 minutes, 60 divided by 10 is 6, so you'll need 6 vehicles to run that route every 10 minutes. If that route eventually slows down, for example to traffic congestion, you'll either have to make it less frequent or add more vehicles to keep the frequency. If the round trip time on that hypothetical route from earlier increases to 75 minutes, you'll either have to add 2 vehicles so it can run every 9.5 minutes, or with the current vehicles run it every 12.5 minutes. Sound familiar? This effect can also occur in the reverse direction. For example, when the Eglinton East Rapatio bus lanes opened, the TTC immediately made all the money that they spent on those lanes back because they no longer had to run additional buses on the lines that run on those lanes, preventing them from having to order as many new buses. So anyway, what does this have to do with Line 6? Well, you might recall from my last video that Line 6 is slower than Metrolinx promised that it would be. The current round trip time on the line is 92 minutes, with an additional 6 minutes waiting at each terminal station for a total of 98 minutes. Now, what would happen if the line was running at the speed promised by Metrolinx? A 34-minute end-to-end travel time would mean a 68-minute round-trip time plus an additional 6 minutes waiting at each terminal station for a total of 74 minutes. If you don't add any additional vehicles, with this round-trip time, you'll notice that the frequencies are now roughly what they were promised to be. During peak hours, the route now runs around every 5 minutes. Off-peak, the line would now run every 7.5 or 9.25 minutes, which matches the 7 to 10 minute off-peak frequency promised by Metrolinx and is much better than the 10 to 12 minute service currently experienced on the line. Clearly, the main issue here isn't simply just that they aren't running enough trains. Rather, it's the speed of the line. Well, kind of. There are a total of 18 Line 6 vehicles, of which 15 run during peak hours and 8 or 10 run during off-peak hours. During rush hours, they're probably running the max amount of trains that they should be, given that the industry standard spare ratio is 20%. The spare ratio is simply the number of vehicles not currently running divided by the number of vehicles which are running on the line. The reason we keep some vehicles not actually running during peak hours is to ensure, even when maintenance is badly needed, that we're still running the exact same service that people are expecting. Thus, during peak hours they shouldn't be adding more trains, but during off-peak hours there's plenty of trains to choose from. For the interim condition, with the line running so slow, they should definitely be adding a couple of extra trains to ensure that the line is running at least every 10 minutes, which is expected from any rapid transit line in Toronto. Thus, while speed is the primary issue here, especially during peak hours, off-peak, the TTC and Metrolinx should have realized from their testing that they needed more trains to run on the line to ensure that it was every 10 minutes or better all the time. Of course, before I conclude this video, I should mention that the TTC could just make the line faster, as I explained in my previous video, which I will link in the description. That's it for how to make Line 6 more frequent. Thanks for watching.